Hello, welcome to today's webinar. I'm Dr. Yolande Chan, Associate Dean Research and PhD MSc programs. I'm delighted that you're interested in our programs. Smith School of Business at Queen's University is world-renowned. Our faculty are very highly ranked and they publish in the very best journals. Our graduate students are not just Canadian, they are global in their origins. We take pride in the teaching and the quality of the research at Smith School. Our program is research focused and we are very supportive of our students, providing them with all that they need to also excel. The location of Smith School is beautiful Kingston, Ontario, in Eastern Ontario, Canada. Today's webinar is focused on finance, one of the 9 area specializations in the PhD and MSc program at Smith School. I do recommend that you go to our website and listen to the general introductory webinar that is not area specific. That webinar provides details on funding, on program length, and other aspects of our studies that are not area specific. Note that year 1 of the PhD program is equivalent to our MSc program. Today we have with us Dr. Ryan Reardon and Lynn Drapeau. Dr. Reardon is an associate professor at Smith School of Business in the finance area. He will provide a formal presentation. Then doctoral student Lynn Drapeau will provide a few informal comments. With no further ado, let me turn the floor over to Dr. Reardon. If you have questions, I should mention, type them in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll have some Q&A at the end. Dr. Reardon.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Yolande. I'm going to talk more or less formally about the program. So I'm going to talk about graduate studies in finance in general, in specific about what we do at the Smith School, what makes us special, and I'll give you a little flavor of my research or how I see things progressing and how that relates to PhD level research and MSc level research. So a lot of the time when we're thinking about financial markets, we're thinking about what's going on right now or in this exact minute. But a lot of the time what we're doing, and I'll circle back to this at the end, is that we're taking a look historically. How have markets progressed? How have they changed? And how are these progressions or changes affecting people? And one of the things we'd like to look at are stock markets. And so here's an example of the stock market where people used to meet under the buttonwood tree on Wall Street. And this was the birth of the modern stock market anyways. You would have brokers that would meet and they would negotiate deals. And this is sort of what we think of as a stock market. Now what a stock market really looks like visually for people anyways is something that looks like this floor on the New York Stock Exchange, where you see a bunch of computer terminals, you see desks, you see a whole lot of things, but interestingly what you don't see is a lot of people. And the reason that we don't see a lot of people is that financial markets, not just stock markets, are becoming more and more automated, more and more technical, and if we really looked deep into what's going on at a stock market, it looks more like this. It more looks like a server room or a bunch of computers that are attached to each other, and the exchanges themselves are no longer even located in the cities that they were named after. For instance, the Toronto Stock Exchange trading floor is in Markham. The New York Stock Exchange has their facilities in Newark. Paris is outside of Paris. London is close to Stansted. So all of these markets are more technical and they're focused on costs. And the question that we ask in finance is whether or not all of these changes are for the better. Are they socially useful? Are people better off with stock markets that are organized or any kind of financial market that's organized like this or not? So what is finance? And I'm certainly not going to cover everything that finance is, but I'll try to hit the key points. Finance is a way to describe how firms raise capital in markets, how they make decisions about the projects they would like to invest in, how they manage the risk in those projects. We also look at how people or investors invest their money, how we lend money, how we trade assets, how do we attain our savings goals, how do we attain our investment goals and our retirement goals. Now, this is a broad area, and the question is, well, how do we do these things? How do we answer these questions, or how do we study investing and lending and borrowing? Well, we usually use historical data, and we use methods that are closely related to economics. So sometimes we would say that we're financial economics. We use statistics, or really applied economic statistics that we call econometrics, theoretical modeling like game theory, decision theory, simulating data, and then a really in-depth data analysis. There are other methods that we would use, surveys, but these four are certainly the bulk of what we do. If you're interested in seeing what else we do in the field, particularly taking a look at what the premier conference, which is the American Finance Association annual conference held in January of every year, or the papers that have been published recently in the Journal of Finance, the main journal in finance, or one of the top 3 journals in finance, then you can go to the website at the bottom of this slide. Now, more specifically, what do we study in finance? There's a lot of common ground with economics, with accounting, and more recently with information systems. We focus on optimal market structures. So is a call auction optimal? Is a reverse auction optimal? We also look at financial contracts like derivatives, financial policies that you find in firms. When do they make a decision to invest? How does lending happen? How does lending happen for small firms, for large firms? How does technology intermediated lending happen? How do we price assets in markets? The governance of firms. So how do directors make decisions? How are directors elected? How are directors removed from corporations? The investing and trading of assets. Intermediation. So intermediation is where a financial institution is between the buyer or the seller of an asset, or the lender and a borrower. And more recently, we're looking more at how technology is changing all of these functions. So what kind of questions are interesting in finance? And this is perhaps geared to my own personal agenda, but I do have some more general questions. But some of the kind of questions people have been asking lately are financial markets that are faster, are they better? And the question you could be asking sort of sitting at home is, well, what does better mean? And sometimes that's part of the question, is defining what a better stock market or a better way to lend or borrow is. Is technology changing lending relationships? So if people aren't meeting face-to-face to negotiate a lending agreement anymore, is technology making this better, or how is it changing these relationships? Can machine learning algorithms outperform human lenders? Other more general questions, what's the optimal firm capital structure? Meaning, should they carry more debt to finance their projects or more equity? What happens to firms' technology when they go into bankruptcy? So did they sell off their IP? Does it disappear? And what role do institutional investors play in markets? So sort of large mutual funds, pension funds, could be seen to be pushing prices around, and whether or not this is the case is an interesting question. And there are numerous other questions, and ideally you can fill in the blank at the end of the slide as to what type of questions are going to be important in the future. I touched on it briefly, but sort of a little more in depth for the methods. Finance uses certainly diverse, rigorous, and ideally parsimonious models, meaning we don't have anything that's extraneous in the model. Data and methods, so statistical and econometric techniques, so we can imagine really easy correlation or ordinary least square regressions, nonlinear models. We also develop theoretical models using decision theory or game theory. We use historical market data like prices and volumes on stock, bond, future markets. accounting data from balance sheets, annually and quarterly reports, ad hoc reports, news articles, headlines, and more recently sort of novel data that comes either in the form of a sort of technology novelty or private data that's provided to researchers directly by a regulator, firms themselves, marketplaces, or the investors. Faculty, we've got 11 tenured and tenure-track professors. We have a number of research active and teaching active emeritus professors that are actively sort of involved in supporting the programs. We cover, I would say, all, but just because I'm an academic, I'll say most areas of finance. We're strong in corporate finance, asset pricing, derivatives, and my own personal focus, which is in market microstructure. So there are other areas of finance, but we certainly cover the big two, corporate finance and asset pricing, and we have extremely good researchers in depth in derivatives and market microstructure. Most of the researchers at the Smith School work empirically, but we also have 2 or 3 active theoretical investors. So if you're interested in corporate finance theory or in asset pricing theory, we can also accommodate you. Most of our professors have published in one of or multiple of the top 3 journals, and we publish in these journals regularly. We're also well represented at the large academic conferences, the American Finance Association, the Western Finance Association, the Canadian or the Northern Finance Association, European Finance Association annual meetings. Now, some of the highlights that our program, I think these are PhD program specific, so I won't go into too much detail. Our MSc program is a 1-year full-time, starting in September, ideally ending in August, and it's equivalent or comparable to the first year of the PhD program. MSc students get a $20,000 in funding. The PhD is a full-time program with 2 years of coursework, followed by a comprehensive exam. Once the comprehensive exam is complete, then PhD students, and we'll be talking to Lynn in a second, who's in this final phase where they're writing their thesis while working on their own independent research. During this phase, or actually during the entire phase, students have a $33,000 in annual support. There are multiple TA, RA opportunities for students. In fact, we encourage most of our students to get involved in TAing and RAing because it helps them to train for their future teaching engagements and also to learn the ropes on publishing and how to collect data and way to sort of compare all of these things. Students who complete the first year of the MSc or complete the MSc program are then usually, I'm guessing, pretty much always, entered to the second year of the PhD program. And as Dr. Chan mentioned at the start, there's a link that you can go to see the program overview. Oh, so there's a problem in the top. So this is graduate courses in finance, not in management analytics. Sorry, I missed that. So we have in the summer we have a boot camp. We have an introduction to databases, which is extremely important because a lot of the researchers, particularly our empirical work, we focus a lot on the databases. Introduction to research methodology. My class thus far is the capital markets theory and empirics, where we survey all of the research in capital markets. Then we have rigorous courses in the econ department, so microeconomic theory, quantitative methods, both at the econ department. In the winter, we have a continuation of the econometrics, financial economics, and then a survey course that covers everything in the corporate finance fields, so theory and empirics. So in the first semester, we get a broad overview of capital markets, and then in the winter semester, we get an extremely sort of in-depth but also broad overview of corporate finance, including all of the sort of economic foundations that you're going to need to continue on. In year 2, we have a second econometrics course. We had a director readings workshop. Then we have in the winter a topics in finance course, and then the advanced macro course. And ideally in the second year, students are starting to transition to developing their own research ideas, pursuing these research ideas, honing their own research skills, and so that in the summer they can present at the grad student consortium, and they present the status of their thesis and a sort of a proposal or a project that the students have been working on. And the end of year 2, and then they transition into the active research phase. So what are the expectations, or what we think a good student, sort of some good student characteristics? One is a focus on research and rigorous academic contributions. So rigorous in this sense means that we ask questions and subsequently write up these questions only for questions that we can answer with our data and with our methods. So we don't sort of guess at the answer. Either we can say something with some sort of probability, or we can't. We have a strong data analysis, and mathematics and statistical skills are things that we certainly expect. Possible backgrounds where we had successful candidates have a strong mathematics and statistics background, business and commerce majors with a focus in finance or in a quantitative discipline. Economic students have done exceedingly well. Engineering and physics, they have an excellent quantitative background, and computer science increasingly, because they're really able to deal with the sort of the data analysis and programming required to be successful. It's good if students have a match with faculty interests. So if a student is looking to do something in market microstructure, and we happen to have a lot of microstructure researchers, that would be a good idea. In areas that we're less well covered in is probably not as good an idea anyways. Computational and programming skills are a plus. They're not a necessity, but students have to be open to learning these skills. It's hard to imagine a PhD student in finance now that lacks computational or programming skills. And students that come in with some industry experience, so working in the financial industry, working in consulting, working in sort of anything sort of related to the research topics or to the program, is usually beneficial. Some of our recent graduate students have looked at the role of social media in finance, looked at public debt markets, the role politics is playing in finance, and more importantly, the questions that if you end up joining us as a PhD student, the questions that you intend to ask. And I think there's always a sort of a positive exchange between the students and the professors. Students ask questions that professors haven't thought of, or researchers, and vice versa. And sort of the transition going back and forth with these questions is important for us as professors and for you as students. And I promised I'd circle back. We sort of went from the buttonwood tree that was sort of a classic example of an old school trading to the most recent form. And so the question is everything old new again? This is a picture of the New York Stock Exchange in the 1880s. And if you look really closely, you see a bunch of telegraph wires going from the New York Stock Exchange to the buildings on the other side of the street, where the buildings on the other side of the street are brokers. And the brokers would pay the highest rent for the buildings that were closest, because the telegraph lines were the shortest, and they would get the information first out of the markets. So when we talk about now how this technology is new and we don't understand this and it's maybe going too far, if we just look back 140 years or 150 years, the brokers of the financial markets were doing exactly the same thing that they're doing now. They were innovating with technology. Now, these old broker telegraph lines were ultimately replaced by the ticker tape. What the ticker tape did is it synchronized information across the entire country. So someone sitting in their brokerage across the street in New York got the information at the same time that a broker sitting in San Francisco on the West Coast would get the information. Well, what did markets do? Well, markets decided that they would install microwave towers between Chicago and New York to get the information off of the ticker tape and faster from Chicago, where futures are traded, to New York, where underlying stocks are traded. So we sort of see this circle in financial markets from technology innovation to regulation to technology innovation and then regulation. So it makes it sort of an active field for all of us, and there are always questions popping up. And not all of these technology innovations are good, and not all of these technology innovations are bad. But I think part of our job anyways is to figure out the good from the bad. And that's it from me, at least for this part of it. And Lynn, I think you're up.
Okay. I will try to give you, describe a little bit my experience in the program, especially the first year. I just want to say first that, I'll share my own experience, but the experience of other students can be really, really different because as students, we arrive in the program with our background, so we have strengths and weaknesses, and our experience we often really struggle with our weaknesses. So I'll share a little bit about my experience, but keep that in mind. For me, when I enter in the program, the first semester was quite challenging, and I would say in terms of time management, because the first semester, obviously, it's a new environment, and you have three courses that are challenging. Sometimes you are a TA, a teaching assistant. Sometimes you are an RA, a research assistant. So you have a huge workload, and you need to manage your time carefully. So my opinion is that, I started with the idea that I could learn and do successfully everything, but since every little part is time consuming, putting all together, it's you really need to stick to some schedules just to do your readings before your courses, and obviously when you enter the program, you have a lot of questions, and I'll give you an example. It's you have many readings, so and everything you have to read, sometimes there's a different purpose. So you kind of rethink the way you read. So maybe it doesn't mean anything for you now, but we could talk to each other just when you start the program, so you'll understand better what I mean. So it's I had to code some I'll say complex things for an assignment, for example. So this assignment was really time consuming because I was learning how to code, and obviously this was one of my weaknesses. So, but when it's really fun overall. It's just the first semester. You need to give yourself a chance because it's a positive environment. Everyone around you wants to help you, and at the same time you have a huge workload. But it's you kind of want you plan for the next day, the next week, and when you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't feel that heavy. But obviously, we adjust along the way, if I can say that. And in Kingston, it's a beautiful city. I'll say from my experience, it's kind of a small city, but that's interesting because we have, I'll say, enough social activities to enjoy Kingston, but at the same time, you don't have too many activities, which is good because you're not too, you don't want too many distractions because you kind of need to focus on your courses and your research. So for me, it's kind of perfect because I like to just take my bike and go to Queens, and when I'm done, I can go back with my bike, and at the same time, it's just it's good for the body and also for the mind. So and I don't know, maybe we could go to specific questions. I don't know if I covered just many of your concerns, questions as students.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you so much, Dr. Reardon. I do have questions. So one question, you just mentioned that Kingston is the location, is the extent to which we have a global presence and the extent to which international visitors come here. Are there seminars in the finance area, or is there any international faculty, any international students? To what extent is this an international community?
Yeah, to what extent it's like an international community, a community? I would say we have professors from different background, and I'm not an English native person. I speak French, and in this department we have some professors. They three professors. They speak French too. So when I arrived, it was just hard because I come from a French environment, so I had to, adjust and learn quickly how to be fluent in English, even if I had some basics. So it felt good for me at first to talk more to French professors, and gradually just, this feeling that you're part of a community, and I had also a French community here. I don't know. Maybe we have.
We certainly have a lot of professors that have a varied background. I'd say half of us are Canadian or mostly Canadian, and the other half are international. So we have colleagues from France directly, not
Yeah.
just the.
Yeah, that's true.
So we've got colleagues from France. I spent a lot of my time in Germany, from Turkey, from China. So we have a relatively good representation. Importantly, also all of the professors that are in Kingston a lot are also, they spend time overseas. So when I talk to my colleagues on a daily or weekly basis, they're coming back from Beijing or from Paris, or they just came back from London. They're in a conference in Australia, in Melbourne. So all of not only are the people that are here and live here from other countries, we're also always out traveling. We have a new crop of MSc and PhD students, and I'd say it's 30. Well, a good number of them are international. A good number of them are national students, the Canadian students. We have speakers from particularly good North American schools, but also good European schools. So not only do we have students and profs that are from other backgrounds that are here, we also have speakers that are on campus quite regularly. We're close to the international airports in Toronto and in Ottawa, and so usually when people are doing seminars, they'll present either in Toronto or one of the Ottawa schools or Waterloo, and they'll come to Kingston as well, and so we have them for a couple of days. So we're certainly not lacking in sort of international exposure.
Thank you so much. You mentioned some of the challenges with the program. I wonder, though, if we could highlight some of the strengths of the Smith program. Why should a graduate student come to Smith School in the finance area? And I'll turn the floor open to both Lynn and to Dr. Reardon. Why Smith? Why should an applicant who's considering Smith and many other universities choose Smith School to study finance?
So I'll give you my perspective. So my perspective for students that are coming into the Smith School is that we're a great school because we spend a lot of time individually with each one of our students. Before a student is admitted, there's support from individual faculty members, at least one, but sometimes multiple faculty members have to express an interest, support, desire to advise the student. So while the student is already going through their first 2 years of coursework and they're not even in the active advising stage, they still have a number of finance profs that are rooting for them, helping them out, directing them, giving them RA and TA opportunities, helping them with their work. And I think that's important to success because you can spend a lot of time in the early years unfocused or having trouble managing your time or not knowing what a good question is from a bad one or what's important from not. And we try to get the students over the steepest part of the learning curve as quickly as we can so that they can be productive in their research and then hopefully quickly get a great job and then become research active and productive themselves.
I agree with Ryan. Just from the start, I had my supervisor really early in the process, and this person became just my main support. Just every question I had, I could just research related or not, I could go to him and just ask these questions, and we basically meet, maybe not every week, but every other week. So it's just professors, they commit to students. So we have a lot of support here, and as students, like Ryan said, it's a learning curve, but we have all the support we need here from our supervisors or just from people in the administration. The ladies helping us with administrative forms and blah blah blah. They're fantastic.
I'd like to throw in one little thing too, is for a school that's, I'm not saying we're a small school or a big school, but for a school of our relative size, we also have fabulous databases. So if students are concerned about coming to the Smith School and wondering, well, am I going to have access to the data set that I really need to do my research, I've yet to run up against the data constraint. And so even if we don't happen to subscribe to it now, we can generally find a way to get students access to data if we don't already have it, which we for the most part do, including some of the data sets that I mentioned, private data sets that other schools don't necessarily have access to. So we're certainly a data-rich school, and that's important, I think, to be successful now in financial research.
Thank you both. I don't see any other questions, so perhaps I'll make some final comments. I do want to, again, emphasize that at Smith School of Business, we are pleased to be a very highly regarded, world-renowned school, and you are coming, if you do choose Smith, to a top-tier business school with global prominence. I would also mention, and we didn't have a chance to discuss this, that the students have an opportunity to learn how to teach, as many of our students graduate and become academics, and they will indeed go on to instruct students of their own. So in addition to the research skills that they are given and provided to us, we instruct our graduate students in terms of how to present and how to teach. And there is a course that all of our graduate students in the doctoral program take. And finally, I would mention that we have some good news. Moving forward in the fall, we will be increasing our rates, the stipends, and we will probably be having packages for the PhD students, $34,000 per year, and at the master's level, $22,000 per year. So the news only gets better and better at Smith School.
Like winning the lottery.
I tell you, and it's winning it big if you come here. That's my biased view. We really do care about our students, and we do support you financially and in every way. So I'd like to thank our speakers today, Dr. Ryan Reardon and doctoral candidate Lynn Drapeau. I'd also like to thank the webinar attendees and those of you who take the time to listen to the webinar after today. Please visit the Smith website, not only the PhD MSc program area, but also the faculty web pages. Look at the faculty research interests and their publications and determine the extent to which your interests match theirs. It's very important in your statement of research interest to show that there's some commonality. And note that on our PhD and MSc program pages, we ask you to introduce yourself. There's a link, and once you click on that link and enter your data, we will stay in touch with you. We also would encourage you to visit the School of Graduate Studies website at Queen's University. The application form for the PhD program and the MSc program is housed there. Finally, if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to contact us. We can be reached by email at mscm@queensu.ca. That's MSc in management, or just simply mscm@queensu.ca, or phdm@queensu.ca for PhD program inquiries. We very much look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you.